Today, wars are breaking out across the world, and whether directly or from behind the scenes, the United States is almost always somewhere in the picture. From the brutal jungles of Vietnam, to the mountains of Afghanistan, to the growing tensions with Iran, and even covert operations linked to Venezuela, American influence on global conflicts is impossible to ignore. But beyond the wars that make the headlines, there is another history, a hidden history. For decades, secret interventions were carried out behind closed doors, operations that changed governments, destabilized nations, and in some cases, pushed entire societies into some of the darkest periods of their existence. And most of it happened without the knowledge of the public until now. In this video, we will uncover some of the most controversial, covert operations ever conducted, backed by declassified government documents, intelligence files, and evidence that remained buried for decades. Some secrets were never meant to be seen. Today, they will be exposed. Curious to find out what really happened behind the scenes? Then subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union held the world hostage under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation, while quietly shaping conflicts across every corner of the globe. Countries like Brazil, Chile, and the Republic of the Congo became living examples of what happened when global powers turned entire nations into pieces on a geopolitical chessboard. And in Latin America, one rule remained clear: governments could exist as long as they aligned with Washington's interests. But what happened when they refused? A recent example came from Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro openly challenged American authority for years, until a US-led operation, powered by intelligence, surveillance, and military precision, ended with his dramatic capture, leaving virtually no room for resistance. Reports indicate the 2026 operation involved months of covert preparation, intelligence gathering, and a rapid deployment of US forces. But this way of thinking did not begin during the Cold War. Its roots go back much further, to the birth of the United States itself. In 1823, President James Monroe introduced what became known as the Monroe Doctrine, built around a simple but powerful idea: America for the Americans. Originally created to push European influence out of the Western Hemisphere, the doctrine would eventually evolve into something far more ambitious: a justification for American intervention throughout the Americas and beyond. Historical records show the doctrine was repeatedly invoked as a basis for US influence in the region. After 2 world wars, that philosophy transformed once again. Under President Harry S. Truman, it expanded into a global mission to contain communism, an era that became known as the Truman Doctrine. And now, history may be repeating itself. In recent days, Israel and the United States launched new offensive actions against Iran, officially justified by accusations of terrorism and threats posed by the Iranian regime. But is national security really the true motive? Or is this simply the latest chapter in a strategy that has been unfolding for more than 2 centuries? In 1953, the United States, working through the CIA alongside British intelligence, helped remove Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, in what became known as Operation Ajax. His crime? Nationalizing Iran's oil, directly threatening Western economic interests in one of the most strategic regions on Earth. What followed would become one of the most infamous covert operations in modern history. According to declassified intelligence records, the operation involved financing street protests, bribing politicians and military officers, influencing members of Iran's elite, and using newspapers to spread propaganda designed to destabilize Mossadegh's government. Every move was carefully calculated, every crisis deliberately amplified, and within weeks, Mossadegh was gone. In his place, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi returned to power, seen by many historians as a ruler whose survival depended heavily on American support. For the next 2 decades, Iran remained closely aligned with Washington, securing Western access to one of the world's most valuable resources, oil. Decades later, the CIA officially released internal documents connected to Project Ajax, confirming details of the operation and exposing how far the agency was willing to go to protect strategic interests abroad. The agency's historical declassification program makes these records publicly accessible today. But while Washington succeeded in placing the Shah back in power, many Iranians never accepted him as a legitimate leader. That resentment would continue to grow until it finally exploded in 1979 during the Iranian Revolution, an event that permanently transformed the Middle East and reshaped America's relationship with Iran forever. But oil was never the only American interest around the world. Thousands of miles away in Latin America, another chapter of covert intervention was already being written, and the consequences would last for generations. In Brazil, it began during the Cold War. In 1961, after Jânio Quadros unexpectedly resigned, Vice President João Goulart became the next major political figure in the country. To Washington, however, Goulart's policies raised a dangerous question. Was Brazil drifting toward communism? As tensions escalated, the White House quietly prepared for direct involvement. In 1964, as Brazil descended into political chaos, President Lyndon B. Johnson approved a secret contingency plan known as Operation Brother Sam. Declassified documents show that naval forces, fuel supplies, ammunition, and logistical support were placed on standby to assist anti-Goulart forces if resistance emerged. However, the task force was never physically used because Goulart's government collapsed before that became necessary. The coup succeeded, and what followed was not days or months, but 21 years of military rule, political repression, censorship, and persecution of suspected opponents across Brazil. And Brazil was only the beginning. A similar pattern would emerge in Chile. In the early 1970s, President Salvador Allende openly defended what he called a Chilean path to socialism. To Washington, this was more than a political experiment. It was a direct threat. At the height of the Cold War, the White House, under President Richard Nixon, saw Allende not only as an enemy of capitalism, but as a dangerous example that could inspire other nations to follow the same path. And the concerns in Washington only grew stronger when Allende began nationalizing key sectors of Chile's economy, especially copper, one of the country's most strategic resources, heavily tied to American corporate interests, including companies like ITT Inc. But economics was only part of the story. What truly alarmed U.S. officials was Chile's growing relationship with Fidel Castro's Cuba and its increasing diplomatic ties with the Soviet Union. And once again, the methods looked familiar. Financial support for opposition groups, pressure through the media, contacts with influential members of the local elite, and economic measures designed to make the country scream. On September 11, 1973, Chile's armed forces, led by General Augusto Pinochet, launched a military coup that ended Allende's government. By the end of that day, Allende was dead. Although no document has ever shown Washington directly ordering the coup, declassified records confirm that the U.S. government spent years working to destabilize Allende's administration and prevent his political survival. For Washington, a military regime was seen as far less dangerous than a socialist government aligned with Moscow. But Brazil and Chile were only part of something much larger. In the mid-1970s, South America became the center of one of the most controversial intelligence networks in modern history. Operation Condor, officially established in 1975, Operation Condor created a secret alliance between military regimes across Latin America, designed to identify, monitor, and eliminate individuals considered political threats, especially socialists, left-wing activists, dissidents, and suspected communist sympathizers. The main countries involved included Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia, and Paraguay. Their intelligence agencies shared photographs, passports, bank records, addresses, family information, and lists of targets who could be arrested the moment they crossed a border. Over the years, Operation Condor has been linked to kidnappings, torture, forced disappearances, and political assassinations across the continent. One of its most shocking attacks happened not in South America, but in Washington, D.C. itself. In 1976, former Chilean Foreign Minister Orlando Letelier was killed in a car bombing, an assassination later connected to agents linked to Operation Condor. And while no definitive proof has ever shown Washington directly commanding Operation Condor, declassified U.S. intelligence documents reveal something equally disturbing. They knew, and in some cases, they were in contact with those who carried it out. History has a strange way of repeating itself. Time after time, interventions, covert operations, and even full-scale wars have been justified in the name of protecting national security, defending strategic interests, or preserving global stability. But behind those justifications, there is often another story, a story of political influence, of violated sovereignty, of governments manipulated from the shadows, and of millions of lives forever changed by decisions made behind closed doors. During the Cold War, fear and uncertainty pushed both sides, the United States and the Soviet Union, to take actions that many still consider deeply controversial today. Borders were crossed, governments were overthrown, and in the name of ideology, human rights were often ignored. So the real question is this: were these operations necessary acts of survival in a world on the brink of nuclear conflict? Or were they simply violations of sovereignty, disguised as national security? What do you think? Were these interventions justified? Or did they cross a line that should never have been crossed? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want a part 2, let me know. Because the history goes much deeper. And remember, sometimes the truth is far more disturbing than fiction. See you in the next video.